What happens when a single sentence, spoken in what seems like passing judgment, shatters the illusion of family, dignity, and safety all at once? And before we get into this story, if you're drawn to shocking confrontations, intense emotional moments, and the kind of drama that leaves you breathless, make sure you subscribe to Roots of Revenge, tap like, and comment immediately, because this story will put you right inside the room, feeling every heartbeat, every glance, every word as if it's happening to you. And it all began on a sun-drenched afternoon when Victoria, a rising star known for her poise, charm, and carefully curated public image, arrived at her family's luxurious beach estate, hand in hand with her daughter Lily, a quiet, observant girl who had always been sensitive to the moods of adults around her. And the weekend was supposed to be a celebration, a chance to reconnect with relatives, to show the world a picture-perfect family enjoying the sun, the sand, the waves. But the moment Julian, Victoria's older brother, a man whose calm control and subtle intimidation were legendary within their circle, laid eyes on Lily, the air shifted, as if the sunlight outside suddenly carried an edge of cold scrutiny. And without preamble, without warning, he said, his voice measured, but cutting, "Your child has no place at the beach house." And the words landed like a physical blow, reverberating through Victoria's chest and sending a shiver down Lily's small frame, who instinctively pressed closer to her mother, clutching her hand as if seeking protection from a force she couldn't understand. And Victoria, stunned, could only stare at him, searching for a sign that this was a joke, a misunderstanding, anything to soften the blow. But Julian's expression was calm, controlled, deliberate, as if every word had been calculated for maximum effect. And when she asked what he meant, his explanation dripped with subtle cruelty. "I just want this weekend to be smooth. There are other guests, and it's a lot to manage. She might not fit in." And the implication was clear. Lily, simply by existing as herself, was a disruption, an inconvenience, something to be tolerated only if necessary. And Victoria felt a cold fire ignite inside her, a mixture of fury, protectiveness, and disbelief, because this wasn't about logistics or crowd size or timing. It was about judgment, exclusion, and the unspoken message that her daughter was not welcome, and the people around them, the extended family, distant cousins, even staff hovering nearby, noticed the tension, some shifting uncomfortably, some pretending nothing had happened. And in that moment, Victoria realized that silence in the face of cruelty was complicity, and she would not allow her child to absorb a lesson of rejection and fear. She would not allow Lily to feel that she had to shrink to satisfy anyone else's comfort. And so Victoria took a slow, steady breath, bending down to meet her daughter's wide, questioning eyes, brushing hair back from her forehead, speaking softly yet firmly. "Lily, you are safe. You belong here. No one has the right to tell you otherwise." And Lily, sensing the unwavering love and courage radiating from her mother, nodded, her small grip on Victoria's hand loosening ever so slightly as trust returned. And Julian, observing the exchange, stiffened, as if surprised that his words had not broken them, as if he had expected tears, apologies, or retreat, and instead found calm resolve, visible strength. And in that moment, the dynamic of power subtly shifted, because control, he realized, could not be imposed simply by assertion or intimidation when met with truth and courage. And Victoria stood fully, meeting her brother's gaze directly, her voice now steady, clear, and unflinching. "Lily is my daughter. She is family. She will not be excluded for your comfort. If you cannot accept that, it is your problem, not hers." And the room seemed to hold its breath, the sounds of the waves outside fading into the background as the magnitude of the confrontation settled over everyone present. Relatives exchanging glances, sensing the gravity of what had just occurred, whispers stirring, and Lily, eyes wide but reassured, squeezed her mother's hand, her small presence now a quiet beacon of innocence and dignity. And as Victoria led her to a nearby lounge chair, positioning herself so that Lily was protected, watched over, and celebrated, she realized this weekend would not be ordinary, that every interaction, every glance, every word spoken would carry the weight of this confrontation. And yet she felt a strange exhilaration, because for the first time in a long while she had drawn a line, one that could not be crossed, one that would teach her daughter that love and courage are louder than judgment, and that being protected, being seen, being valued is never negotiable. And as the sun sparkled across the ocean waves, Victoria felt a quiet, burning claret. The afternoon unfolded like a powder keg, the golden sunlight streaming through the windows, unable to soften the weight of what Julian had said. Each laugh, each clink of glasses, each whispered conversation around the estate now carrying the tension of unspoken judgment, and Victoria felt it pressing in on every side, every corner of the luxurious beach house charged with the silent scrutiny of her brother, who moved through rooms with a predator's calm, eyes flicking to Lily with a measured, almost clinical assessment, as if he were waiting for the child to make a misstep, to prove he had been right. And Lily, perceptive despite her young age, sensed the subtle coldness, her small hand clutching her mother's tighter, hesitant, and Victoria could feel the anxiety ripple through her daughter like a physical tremor. Yet she refused to show fear herself, refused to allow Julian's words to dictate the terms of the day, and when he approached them in the sunlit lounge, glass in hand, his posture relaxed but deliberate, he leaned slightly toward Lily and spoke in that deceptively calm, authoritative tone. "I just think this might be overwhelming for her. Too many people, too much going on. Maybe she should stay close to you." And Victoria's heart thudded, the words layered with exclusion, a subtle dismissal masked as concern, and she looked up, her eyes meeting Julian's, steady and unyielding, her voice calm but firm. "Overwhelming or inconvenient for you? Lily is not an inconvenience. She is my daughter, she is family, and she belongs here just as much as anyone else." And for a moment, Julian's smirk faltered, his composure slipping ever so slightly, the first crack in the wall of control he had built around the weekend, and Victoria realized that confrontation, though uncomfortable, was necessary, that the smallest act of bravery in defense of her child could shift the balance of power, influence the perceptions of everyone present, and teach Lily something she could never unlearn, that she deserved to be seen, to be celebrated, to occupy space without apology. And as they stepped toward the patio, the waves crashing softly in the distance, Victoria held Lily's hand tighter, guiding her through cousins and relatives who watched silently, some exchanging knowing glances, others feigning ignorance. Yet the tension hung in the air, palpable, as Julian followed at a distance, his expression unreadable, calculating, waiting for an opportunity to regain authority. And when Lily paused to watch a bird dip into the water, Julian's voice cut through the hum of conversation, sharp now, just enough to carry across the patio. "Maybe she's too sensitive. She's not ready for this." And Victoria, without raising her voice, turned fully toward him, locking eyes, her tone steady, unwavering. "Sensitive? She is observant, she is thoughtful, she is learning the world, and I will not teach her that she has to shrink, hide, or apologize for who she is to make others comfortable. That is not a lesson any child should have to learn." And the words echoed across the patio like a declaration, drawing subtle attention from nearby relatives and guests, whose whispers and curious glances punctuated the tension like small fireworks. And Lily, sensing the power behind her mother's voice, straightened slightly, a quiet smile forming, her trust in Victoria absolute. And Julian, observing, felt the shift, the realization that his subtle manipulation, his attempts at exclusion, had no impact, that control could not be asserted through intimidation alone, and for the first time, the smirk of certainty he usually wore was replaced by something like doubt, fleeting and dangerous. And as they walked toward the beach, Victoria's thoughts raced, recognizing that this weekend, this confrontation, would define the rules of engagement for the family, set the tone for what was acceptable, what would no longer be tolerated, and that the world could be harsh, judgmental, and cold. But in this moment, Lily was protected, visible, celebrated, and Victoria felt an exhilarating, fierce pride, knowing that even if Julian tried to regain his composure, even if he tried to frame the day as normal, or to regain authority with words or gestures, the balance had already shifted, quietly but irrevocably, and as the waves lapped at their feet, sunlight glinting off the water in a million fractured reflections, Victoria knew that the lesson was already sinking in, not just for Lily, but for everyone watching, that courage is quiet but undeniable, that love is louder than cruelty, and that standing up for those who cannot yet defend themselves is the truest measure of strength. And Lily, squealing as the water touched her toes, unaware of the gravity of what had transpired, felt nothing but joy, trust, and safety. And Victoria realized that no matter how tense the conversation, no matter how much Julian attempted to assert dominance, the most important thing had been. The evening sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the estate, yet the tension that had begun in the afternoon had not dissipated. If anything, it had thickened, settling into the corners of the beach house like an uninvited presence. Julian moving quietly through the rooms, always observing, always measuring, as if the very act of Lily's existence threatened the carefully constructed image of family perfection he sought to uphold. And Victoria, aware of every glance, every subtle shift of expression, felt the pulse of her own anger and protectiveness rise with every step, knowing that the confrontation from earlier had not ended the battle, only signaled that it was about to escalate. And when Julian approached the patio where Lily had been building a small sandcastle, perfectly content, he spoke softly, deceptively calm. Maybe she should leave this to the others. She might get frustrated, or worse, slow things down. And Victoria's gaze snapped to him, unwavering, a calm fire in her eyes. She will participate on her own terms. She is capable. She is allowed to enjoy this without your judgment. And her voice, though measured, carried a weight that silenced the casual conversations nearby, drawing the attention of relatives, friends, even staff, who had begun to notice the undercurrent of conflict that Julian tried so carefully to mask. And Julian's lips pressed into a thin line, the first crack in his usual composed demeanor, as he realized that Victoria would not back down, that the subtle power plays, the veiled critiques, the calm exclusionary words, had no effect on a woman determined to defend her child. And Lily, sensing the tension, paused and looked up at her mother, eyes wide but trusting, drawing strength from Victoria's stance. And Victoria felt a swell of pride, mixed with exhaustion, because the confrontation was both exhausting and empowering, a test of patience and courage. And she would not yield, no matter how calculated Julian's attempts were to regain authority. And as other relatives glanced between the two, whispers circulated, curiosity and unease in equal measure, while a few discreet nods of support offered silent solidarity. And Julian, growing frustrated at his diminishing influence, muttered something about making a scene, trying to frame Victoria's protective stance as overreaction, and Victoria's calm response cut through it like steel. This is not a scene. This is the truth. Lily has a right to be here, to belong, to be safe, and if that makes you uncomfortable, that is your problem, not hers. And the words hung in the salty evening air, resonating far beyond the immediate circle, as if echoing across the waves crashing against the shore. And Lily, emboldened by her mother's unwavering defense, took a small step forward, picking up her little plastic shovel, determined to continue building her castle, to claim her space in the world without apology. And Julian, watching this, felt a rare pang of doubt, the realization that control cannot be imposed when met with unwavering courage, that attempts at intimidation can fail spectacularly when confronted with love and truth. And Victoria, seeing the shift, felt a quiet satisfaction, tempered by caution, knowing the weekend was far from over, that subtle tests, passive-aggressive comments, and the faintest flickers of judgment would continue, but that the core truth remained unshakable. Lily belonged, and Victoria would ensure no one, not even her own brother, could make her daughter feel otherwise. And as twilight settled over the estate, relatives began to join in on the patio, some engaging with Lily, offering smiles and small encouragement, while Julian retreated to a shadowed corner, glancing occasionally, a tension in his shoulders that he could not fully hide, and Victoria felt a sense of vindication, not in public humiliation, but in the undeniable reality that her child was safe, loved, and visible, a presence that could not be erased by judgment or cruelty. And as the sky turned pink and orange, reflecting on the glassy surface of the ocean, Victoria reflected on the subtle power dynamics of family, the quiet battles that shape a child's sense of worth, and the courage it takes to defend them, knowing that each step she had taken, every word spoken, every boundary drawn, was a brick in the foundation of Lily's confidence. And as she watched her daughter laugh, run along the edge of the surf, the tension surrounding Julian's disapproval seemed almost irrelevant, powerless against the strength of a mother's love and a child's innate right to belong. And Victoria understood with a clarity that felt almost sacred that this confrontation, this weekend, this struggle, was not merely a battle for a single moment, but a declaration of principles, a statement to everyone present, a lesson to Lily that belonging, dignity, and protection are non-negotiable, and that courage often manifests quietly, unwaveringly, in the AHAA. Night had fallen over the beach house, the moon casting a silver glow across the waves, and yet the tension that had gripped the estate all day had not entirely faded. It had transformed into something quieter, heavier, a lingering weight that could be felt in every glance, every pause, every hushed whisper among relatives, and Victoria, standing on the patio with Lily by her side, felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration, because she knew the battle had been fought and, in many ways, won, even if the war was far from over, and Julian, retreating to the shadowed balcony, watched them from a distance, his expression unreadable, a mixture of frustration, disbelief, and perhaps a dawning recognition that his subtle attempts to control and exclude had failed, because no words, no status, no quiet intimidation could erase the courage Victoria had displayed, or the truth that her daughter belonged as fully as anyone else in the house. And as the evening continued, the whispers among family members grew, subtle commentary about the confrontation, curiosity, quiet admiration, and even social media began to stir as photos of the estate, the children playing, and small family moments were shared online, some innocently, some capturing the tension, and the story began to take on a life of its own, beyond the estate, friends, followers, and strangers commenting on Victoria's quiet, unwavering protection of her child, the courage to stand up to her own brother, and the refusal to allow exclusion or judgment to define a child's experience. And Victoria felt a mix of pride and awe, seeing how one act of steadfast love could ripple outward, reaching far beyond the moment. And Julian, observing the growing awareness, felt the weight of the public gaze, the subtle social consequences, the quiet but undeniable shift in perception, and his attempts at reclaiming authority seemed increasingly futile, because the narrative was no longer about control or appearances. It was about love, courage, and protection, and the world was watching, silently taking note. And as the night deepened, Lily played by the water's edge under the watchful gaze of Victoria, her laughter carrying across the sand, pure, unfiltered, and unstoppable. A small child's joy standing in stark contrast to the tension that had defined the day, and Victoria felt a profound clarity settle over her, the realization that the most important victory had already been won. Lily had felt safe, seen, celebrated, and unshaken, and that nothing Julian could do would change that. And as family members began to drift toward evening drinks, soft conversations, and the quiet routines of night, Julian made one final, subtle attempt at conversation, a carefully phrased question about plans for tomorrow, a test to see if he could reassert some influence, and Victoria responded with calm firmness, polite but unwavering, asserting her boundaries without anger, letting him see that control would not be regained through manipulation or passive aggression. And as she tucked Lily into bed, brushing back her hair, whispering how proud she was, Victoria felt a surge of emotion, a combination of relief, pride, and love, knowing that this weekend, this confrontation, would remain etched in their lives, not as a moment of shame or fear, but as a testament to courage, protection, and unshakable maternal love. And in the following days, the story rippled further. Discussions among extended family, discreet messages exchanged with friends, comments on social media, and subtle coverage in lifestyle circles highlighted the incident, lauding Victoria for her composure and bravery, while also exposing the cracks in Julian's carefully maintained image, showing that even those who seem controlled and unshakable can falter when confronted with truth and courage, and Victoria observed the reactions with quiet satisfaction, knowing she had not sought attention or validation, only justice and protection for her daughter, yet seeing the ripple effect affirmed the impact of steadfast love, the power of standing up to exclusion, and the importance of drawing clear, unbreakable lines in defense of those you love. And as the sun rose over the ocean in the days that followed, Victoria and Lily walked along the shore, the sand cool underfoot, the waves steady and unrelenting, a reflection of their own resilience and courage. And Victoria realized that the weekend, the confrontation, the lines drawn, and the lessons imparted would echo throughout their lives, shaping not only Lily's sense of self-worth and belonging, but also the way family, friends, and even strangers perceived what it means to protect, love, and stand unwaveringly in the face of subtle cruelty. And now, as you watch this story unfold, I want you to think about your own experiences, your own boundaries, and your courage, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us what you would have done in Victoria's shoes, how you